Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, I have the pleasure of introducing to you a friend of mine for a long time and former trainer of mine. Well, not former, because he still trains and I still take training every once in a while. I just haven't trained with Tom in a few years. Tom Walls. Tom is a trainer at the Firearms Academy, Seattle. Tom, you've been through training with Masada. You've took a deadly force instructor training. You've taken a lot of master level training. You're well qualified to teach firearms, right?
And the fun thing is that, they say the more you teach, the more you learn.
Yes.
Absolutely true. It's amazing the questions and the new situations I get, and I have to go, let me find out.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I've said, and I cannot say this as a firearms instructor with absolute authority. I can say it as a driving instructor with absolute authority. If you want to get better at something, teach it. I was a good driver before I became a driving instructor. I became a much better driver. I would even rate myself as a exceptional driver after I began teaching driving. So yeah, it's you become better when you are responsible for delivering that skill to other people.
Well, it's not just repeating what your instructors have told you and taught you. You have to be able to explain it in a way that somebody understands.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get into the why, like, well, why do I shoot thus and such stance? Well, because my instructor told me, or because that's how this gun fits my hand under these circumstances. You can really go down the rabbit hole with that. Fortunately, rabbit holes are kind of fun to go down sometimes.
Absolutely. That's some of the best discussions I've ever had in training. And it takes me back to my very first professional firearms class, which, by the way, was with Kathy Jackson, a friend of both of ours. And before that, I'm going to turn myself sideways here a little bit so I can show it in front of the camera. I mean, I got all my training from TV, so I held the gun like this. And
No. This is how I learned it. Or like this.
Yeah. So, and I learned from Kathy the two-handed grip with the thumbs crossed, and then I've since learned from other people, well, no, your thumbs need to be forward and lined, and I have gone back and forth, but I always end back up with where I started my training at. They always end up with thumbs crossed, simply because, in my opinion, it's going to be much harder to take that gun away from me if I've got a thumbs crossed grip on that gun, and somehow you get inside of the range where you shouldn't be and get your hand on the gun and are trying to take it away from me.
Well, the thing is, people want to know why. If you look at the 5 tenets of verbal judo, one of them is people want to understand why. And that's a very American thing, is to have an explanation so people can understand it. I will shoot a single stack 1911 with a different grip than I'll hold a big fat Glock because of how it fits my hand. But I can't go back to, that's because Miss Odd said this, or Marty Hayes said this, or this is how Bell teaches it at FAS. I need to understand why, so I can go to this student and say, you need to shoot isosceles. You should probably try this modified Weaver and see how that works. Because the determinant is not who you're the greater disciple of and ride on their coattails. The determinant is what works best for that student to get downrange rounds, to get downrange hits, and to be able to control that gun the way it needs to be controlled. And that's where the whole teaching thing comes in. Mm-hmm. That's that whole world that opens up, as I know you discovered teaching driving.
Absolutely. We've got some, and the bullet is all about news in the Second Amendment world. And I want to get to the news, but what I want to lead off with today is something that is right down your alley. And we'll do this every time you're on. I'm going to bring in some stories that have some training value to it. and I've seen this story today out of USA Carry where a homeowner finds somebody, interrupts somebody stealing his car at 3:30 in the morning this past week, interrupts the guy stealing, attempting to steal a car. Guy's running away, and the homeowner, car owner, opens fire and now is facing 20 years in prison, as well as some neighbors that are really upset with him. So, and what I've always said on the Polite Society podcast, I don't know if I brought it up here or not, but what I've always said on the Polite Society podcast, as a general rule of thumb, if they are running away, it's time to stop shooting, not start shooting. Of course, with every rule, there are exceptions.
There are. The thing is, and this is something we emphasize where I teach, is that it's not just knowing how to shoot, because I can teach a left-handed crippled monkey to shoot a gun and hit the target. It's when and when not, and then you've got to look beyond that, because we're taught in our society, and it's reinforced by television and movies and media and all the sound bites, that after the bad guy's down, the good guy, the camera pulls back and the music swells and the credit rolls and it's done. No, that's the end of the first chapter. You're using deadly force against another human being, and our society will hold you accountable, and it should. In this gentleman's case, he did a fairly common thing that was wrong. He let his ego get in the way of his judgment. We need to teach shooting, and we need to teach judgment skills, when to shoot, when not to shoot. So the rule of thumb, Masad goes over this in depth in his classes. It's immediate and otherwise unavoidable threat of death or serious bodily injury to the innocent. So it's got to be happening right now. Mm-hmm. You can go down another rabbit hole and talk about stand your ground laws, but it's, if you don't do something, something's going to happen. Death or serious bodily injury, and that's defined by law. Death's fairly obvious. Serious bodily injury can include crippling injuries, broken bones, maiming injuries. Rape is considered by law a deadly force attack. And the third prong has to be there also. It has to be to the innocent. Bad guy and his partner can't protect each other and claim self-defense because you pointed a gun at them. They're not innocent. What happened was the threat was no longer present for this gentleman at 0:30 in his car. The threat was leaving. He didn't have any immediate risk of death or serious bodily injury. Guy's running away. We don't get to punish. Yes. Our ego wants us to punish this bad person for invading my territory, my property, and it's a primal instinct. But we can't do that because we possess deadly force. The bad guys can run away. The cops will get them. Those guys, the career criminals, they always end up in police custody at one point or another. It's not our job. Our job is to be a good witness.
Absolutely.
Now, the neighbor that I read this, the neighbor that got a couple of holes in their house as a result of this very poor and ill-advised shooting, that's a testament to what else we have to deal with. We are responsible for every round that goes downrange. So not only was the shooting a bad judgment about to do it, it was also very bad shooting.
Yes. And I looked at the story off USA Carry and then the source story that came from, and nowhere does it say how many rounds were fired. So at least 2, because 1 did hit the suspect, or at least 3, because 1 did hit the suspect, and 2 hit a residence.
That we know of.
That we know of, yeah. So, and Masad Ayub has said many times in my present, every round fired has a lawyer attached to it.
You bet. I'm not an attorney. I've had much training, but I'm not licensed to practice law nor educated to practice law. But this guy's in a world of hurt. I can't imagine he's not going to be convicted for something.
Yeah. It's
the ego-invested shooting. You know, somebody shoots your dog. I don't know if you're a pet owner or not. We've got a couple of furries here at Browncoat Manor. I would get right pissed off. You know, not just my property, They're my pets. They're my friends. They're part of my family. By my state law, I can't use deadly force to protect that, no matter how emotionally invested you are. And that's where the training comes in. You need to understand the laws of your state, whether or not you agree with them morally or personally. Those are the things that society will hold you accountable for.
Mm-hmm.
That's the standard to which you will be held accountable. And you need to think about this before the event. God forbid you have an event. You're not going to make really good branching decisions and have epiphanies in the middle of an armed conflict. Your brain's going to be someplace else.
Yes, absolutely. The adrenaline's going to be, way up here, and your processing level's going to be down, somewhere around waist level.
We were all teenagers. We understand that, yes.
Mm-hmm. I want to move on to one more story here. Well, we got several more stories, but Tom, you're in Washington State.
I am.
Washington State this year passed a rather silly law limiting magazine capacity.
That's a very polite way to put that. Yeah.
Of course, the Second Amendment Foundation's home offices are in Washington State. And then today it was announced that Brownells is stepping up in a big way to help out. And the law in Washington State does not go into effect, I believe, am I right, until July?
That's correct. It has yet to go past the governor's desk. It's on his desk now. The House and the Senate in the state of Washington passed. He has yet to sign it. Okay. However, if I recall Washington state law correctly, if he doesn't sign it, it's going to pass anyway. So it's de facto going to happen.
So
Brownells is offering a couple of bucks back, as I recall.
Yep. If you buy a magazine, let me just go ahead and read this from the press release. Through the Mag Dump Project, I love the name of it, Brownells will donate $2 to the SAF for every aluminum Brownells AR-15 magazine sold between now and June 24th. According to Brownells, the effort has two main goals. The first is to help Washington State gun owners procure reliable, proven, standard capacity magazines for their AR-15 style firearm before the ban goes into effect, to help guarantee their ability to exercise their Second Amendment rights and freedoms. The company explained the second goal, Brownells said, is to supply cash to the Second Amendment Foundation that will be earmarked to help fund a lawsuit to be filed against the ban on all magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. Thank you, Brownells. And we're getting comments, and I'll get to the comments in just a second. But
yes, Brownells, thank you.
Brownells, that's fantastic. I know other manufacturers have said they're prioritizing sales of magazines to Washington State. But again, at $2 per magazine, and we're not talking expensive magazines here either. $2 per magazine, that's a hunk of money that Brownells is going to be giving.
Good on Brownells. Our local dealers, we've seen this at my local favorite gun shop. They're saying, hey, we got a case of these things in. They're advertising them for good prices. We need to remember, though, it's not just AR magazines. You got your Glock 19, you got your Smith & Wesson M&P, you got your little SIG 365. All of those can hold more than 10 rounds, which is amazing to me because we face the same criminal threat that the cops do, and their gun of choice is typically Glock 17 or Glock 19 with a whole bunch of bullets. But somehow we don't need that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying that it made any sense. I live in a fairly rural, as you know, rural part of Washington, just about an hour south of Seattle. And Seattle tends to control the politics on this side of the mountains. Around where I live, this is agricultural. People shoot on their properties. You still see Trump for president signs on fence posts. I can go out and do that now. Unfortunately, we got outvoted.
Well, in about 2.5 more years, they're going to be relevant again, I think.
I'm hoping that the Ninth District's recent en banc review from their California case. Uh, I hope SCOTUS looks at it. If the Supreme Court can rule on that,
Mhm.
there's a lot of good Supreme Court stuff coming up this year, and I don't see us having much a better chance to get that ruled on the way we hope it's ruled on.
Absolutely. Let me get a couple comments in here. George says, hello, 2A defenders, wishing everyone a great weekend. He followed up with talking about the dog. Somebody did shoot my dog. I did not have the opportunity to shoot back. The sheriff wasn't interested in arresting the perp. I packed up and moved. Going back to that scenario, I have thought about that. If somebody shoots my dog, let's think about this. They're going to have a firearm out, and if fired, I'm going to certainly get my firearm out, get it on target, and my finger will be on the trigger. Will I fire? Probably not unless they start swinging the firearm towards me, but I can certainly justify having that firearm out and having it a 1/16 of an ounce away from discharging.
And there's an argument to be made for that. My wife and I were having this discussion over coffee this morning. If Knucklehead comes at you with a gun and your trusty dog starts barking to protect you and Knucklehead shoots your dog, that to me is an indicator of really bad malicious intent from an armed person who had no trouble shooting the dog trying to protect me. That's something articulable. As opposed to Knucklehead walks by, reaches over the fence, shoots my dog, walks away.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that goes back to what we talked about a few minutes ago. You need to brainstorm this stuff. What if? What ifing is a powerful tool, and it gets you to think when you're not under stress of a deadly force attack, and start to look at that and discuss and spend some time in a class that not only goes on how to shoot, but when to shoot, when not to shoot, understand your state law. I'm going to keep saying that over and over and over. The law part is not as sexy as the shooting part. We all like to shoot. We like steel to ring. We like little teeny groups 100 yards away. When it comes down to it in court, it's going to be your judgment that's going to be questioned, not your shooting.
Yes. Well, unless you happen to hit a neighbor's house and miss your target and decide that house is, yeah.
All he's got to do is trot his little 2-year-old out and say it was her bedroom wall, and you've lost your freedom.
Exactly.
One instant of bad judgment, and you lose your freedom for up to 20 years for this gentleman we talked about.
Next story I want to talk about, I found this one off theweek.com this morning. Unfortunately, there's a 15-year-old that lost their life in Illinois, and now mom has convinced a congressperson to push forward a federal safe storage law. Personally, we've run Mary Forge's video from the DC Project here on the Daily Bullet before and on Polite Society podcast. Mary's story is so powerful, and she has said, look, in my instance, when I was being attacked and my attacker was in my bedroom, if there would have been a state safe storage law, I would have been dead and the killer would have gone after my daughter next.
Mm-hmm.
The safe storage laws are going to kill people. That's.
I can't disagree with you at all. I really can't. We have a safe storage law in Washington. Now, interestingly enough, at Firearms Academy of Seattle and other schools that I've attended, even before the laws were enacted in those states requiring safe storage, as they have been here in Washington, schools were teaching that. We taught it as a fifth rule in addition to Colonel Cooper's 4. But in our law, the problem is it doesn't define safe storage, and I haven't yet read a law where that's included, what that safe storage entails. If I'm in my house and I've got my doors locked, because I keep them locked, because we live rural and people can come up that I'm not aware of, Is that a sufficient lock? I follow Kathy Jackson's advice, and I'm sure you've heard it when you did the cornered cat classes. It's either under lock and key or it's on my person. Now, we have an addendum to that rule in our house. It's just my wife and I, and we have no little kids. So it may be out of my holster so it doesn't rip up my chair, on a table within reach or within one step. That's kind of the rule in our house. When we have the little toddler nieces, well, grandnieces and great-grandnieces now and nephews come over, it's either on my person, which means in a pocket holster in a pocket, or on a belt holster on my belt, and usually covered up, just so kids don't get weird about it. Or it's under lock and key. There's no hidden in the sock drawer. There's no in a shoebox in the closet. There's no exceptions. We have upstairs guns for when people come down my driveway at dark 30 and set the alarms off, and that happens. They're locked up, so I can't inadvertently leave the house to go, get hardware or something and go, oh, damn, I left my AR out. Hope nobody breaks in.
Yeah. I want to get this comment in here fast. Charlie Chambers, what if scenarios are brilliant mind exercises to do? Discuss with experts to improve one's imagination for risk mitigation. And Charlie, sure. I take that one. I do what if scenarios when I walk into convenience stores. As I'm pulling up, I look for, before I walk in, I look for how many entrances are there, where are the obvious exits, just so that somebody wants to take down a convenience store and I'm inside, what am I going to do? When I'm inside there, if somebody comes in that door, what am I going to do?
It's a wonderful thing to do if you are in the company of armed people, too. I have the wonderful, God-blessed advantage of having a wife that is trained as well or better than I. We're both retired martial arts instructors. What she's capable of doing can be heinous, and we practice as a team. Not everybody gets to do that, but if you've got a spouse or significant other or someone you spend time with, and they know you're armed and you choose to give them that knowledge, talk about the what ifs. Okay, my job is to give armed cover while you go there. You take the kids. Kathy Jackson was the shooter in her family. Her husband, Bob, his job, because he's a very muscular guy, was to grab the 5 kids and boogie while she covered the retreat. Have a plan. Have something. So you can say, oh my God, it's not happening, is the wrong thing, and the right thing would be, oh, I thought this was going to happen, and I got an idea how this is going to play out. Because you're not going to make decisions well under stress.
I want to get this comment. No, the comment that's already done. One last story, because we're getting down towards the time we have. We're not. I'm going to cut the show notes. We have one story short. I'm going to bring up this last story, and that is a prosecutor. And let me try and I forget where this state is out of, but I got it off the Reason.com and the Bullock Conspiracy. I'm not finding this the state, but a guy's pulled over, and trooper smells marijuana, so he searches the car, arrests the guy, finds marijuana, and they try to prosecute the guy for distribution, and there wasn't enough for distribution. And then the prosecutor says, well, the guy had a firearm on him, therefore, I mean, that's a tool of the trade for drug dealers. We should be able to prosecute because of that, right? Thank goodness the answer was no.
That's a stretch. Let me see if I can find that story for you.
And I'm still looking, and I cannot find the state this was in.
Everything but the judge's name is there. It's ridiculous.
North Carolina.
Well, I've got alcohol, so that means I must be an alcoholic. I've got an axe. I'm going to be an axe murderer. That's the only
Right.
reason you'd have it. All they got to do is bring up the number of hunting licenses in the state. But strangely enough, you and I have both run into people that really think that way.
It's just unfortunate that a prosecutor does.
Unfortunate, yes. Unusual, not that much. Political appointment.
Yeah.
And I bet we could guess the letter R or D after the mayor's name.
Yeah, I would imagine, and I don't think it's going to be an R, and probably not an I.
I doubt it very much. The recent troubles we had in the city of Seattle with Chaz and defunding and all this socialist nonsense is coming home to roost now. Our state legislators reversing a lot of the restrictions they put on law enforcement. That passed handily. I worked as a cop, as a reserve cop for a bunch of years, and I still have contacts, and those folks have really had their feet to the fire with some of these restrictions that are fortunately going to disappear.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that come, about 2 months from now, 2 months to somewhere around 10 weeks, we're going to be starting to get the spring decisions from the Supreme Court. And my real hope is that specifically in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association case, we start getting a lot of strong pro-Second Amendment decisions. Should the right decision come in that case, believe me, there are stacks and stacks and stacks of cases behind there that are just waiting to go forward.
It's been frustrating the last few years that SCOTUS hasn't given cert to a lot of cases that we would like to have seen. I think that our patience has been borne out with what they're hearing. I would like to see what happens if that New York State ruling is in a two-way favor. What happens to the requirements for concealed carry permits state to state? Because now we have, 23 states that are constitutional carry this week?
Yes. We have, because I'm writing for tomorrow, or I was writing for tomorrow, pull up that particular set of show notes. We had 22. Alabama was 22. Ohio became 23. If Nebraska or Indiana or Georgia moves, they would be 24, 25, 26, depending on how they fall.
Crossing fingers on those.
Yes.
And I'm sad to say the state of Washington was one of the first shell issue states. And the way things are right this moment with our Attorney General and Governor, I don't think we're going to see constitutional carry anytime soon.
Well, I honestly believe that because of the Supreme Court, I'm going to get my crystal ball out here.
Go for it.
And because of the Supreme Court, I don't think that Washington can fall back on May issue. I don't think they can go backwards because I think the entire nation and places like Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands that are territories, I think everybody's going to be shall issue come this summer. Now, shall issue, we're going to have to sue and sue and sue these states because Hawaii has gone and gone to their, we're going to make our permits good for 6 months. And oh, by the way, you've got to have 40 hours of training, including, I think, a stupid large number of live fire rounds included, and an equally stupid number of in-classroom hours every 6 months to re-qualify for your training. That is may issue in Hawaii. So just going shall issue in Hawaii, we're going to have to sue Hawaii, New Jersey, New York. We're going to have to sue them into compliance. But I really think that this coming late spring, early summer, we're going to get a huge boost from the Supreme Court to be able to start making those steps.
As a trainer, I make money. Part of my income is from teaching people how to shoot firearms, and my wife and I get assigned to the intro classes because we're of an age where we're non-threatening, and we're getting so many more folks that are non-traditional students. You know, not the FUDs and the hunters and the mall ninjas. We're getting school teachers, people. I use the term people of color, people with alternate lifestyles, LGBTQ crowds. They're getting bashed. That ain't right. One thing I have learned, and one thing I have seen with the shooters in my world and the people I associate with, the people I talk to on the net, we don't like bullies. We don't want anybody being bullied. So these folks are coming to us, and they're coming to Redneck, Lewis County, Washington, and they don't know what to get. And my job, and any instructor's job really, is to make them feel welcome and to introduce them to safe handling of firearms. And the more of those people that buy guns and the more of those people that train are now people that are invested in their own rights and being responsible for their own safety and being their own first responders. And those people will become our allies. And I think that's how we're going to win.
Amen. Amen. Well, we are past time. Big shock. I like to talk, and we went over time. But
yeah, I hate talking.
Tom, great job on your first trip through, man. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure, sir. Thanks for what you do. You've been carrying the flag and walking the walk for a lot of years, and it's an honor to be able to be part of that with you.
All right. Folks, that's going to wrap it up for this week of the 5 p.m. Central Time broadcast. I do want to encourage you to join me tomorrow for the weekend show. The people joining me are going to be Brooke Cheney, Mike Piwowarski, and John Crump are going to be with me tomorrow, noon Central Time, for the 1 hour live show. Come join me tomorrow, and thanks for your time today. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody.